evening, everybody.
Hi, Taylor.
Good evening.
Welcome to the IMC Club at IA. How many of you are here for the first time ever? Wow. Okay.
Wow.
You guys stop it back there, or I'm going to make you leave. Okay? So, yeah. How many of you, so let's see, I should have maybe clarified that. Is this your first time ever to be at Independence Aviation? Okay, great. We're about the best known secret on the field, right? Okay. I'm Taylor Albrecht. I sort of helped coordinate this IMC Club. This is, I'll explain a little bit more later about what it is, but this is actually an offshoot of the EAA. So we do things at the request of the Grand Poobah. Do I get to call you that today or whatever?
Our relationship is such that you do anything you want to do.
Bob likes to do things different here, and that's what they did when they opened up in 2007. You guys probably know the, what was it, 2010 or 11 study by AOPA. Why do we have 80% private pilot candidates not finished? Because there's all kinds of things wrong with flight training. Bob and Chuck Gensler, who is the lead CFII for the IMC Club, recognized that in '07 and created Independence Aviation to address those situations. So I am honored to have been able to work with them since 2010. And this is actually our 5th year of the IMC Club. So pretty cool. You guys probably signed up mostly on the FAA safety website. And so what I have is a sign-in sheet. The top sheet are for members that are already part of the group. The bottom sheet would be for guests, people who signed up via the spans. If your name isn't on there, just put it down. Make sure I can read your email, because that's how we key FAA safety credit for this. Every meeting that we do in the IMC Club, I put on FAA safety and you get credit for it. One of the things we do differently, as you can tell, is we have pizza, beer, wine, soda. Help yourselves, and if you could, help us out a little bit to defray the cost. Thank you. We always start off our meetings with a kickoff video. I'll bet some of you guys have seen this. It's pretty cool.
SpaceX, yeah. SpaceX launch. It's Martians right there, isn't it?
2 out of 3.
Yeah, so the main
Doesn't look like Martians. Is this
engine
in
didn't make it, I guess, and landed in the ocean. But how cool is that?
That's real.
Yeah.
Sci-fi.
So, this is our typical agenda for the meeting. We're going to have some welcome and introductions. I do have I have a special presentation. And then we talk a little bit about some new developments. Then the IMC guys at Oshkosh come up with a question of the month. Then we'll have our scenario. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what this club is all about. So the first thing I'd like to do, how about that for a list of people I knew that were coming?
Wow.
That's awesome. What I'd like for you to do, if you would, just real quick, you know that 30-second elevator speech about yourself? Let's just go around. What's your name? What kind of pilot are you? Aviation experience, and maybe why you're here. Start it out, Joshua.
All right. I'm Joshua Gregg. I'm 20 years old. I got a private multi-instrument in about 260 hours and getting close to commercial. And I have about 36 hours of hood and actual time.
You're not a guest.
My name's Hunter O'Mara. I just began instructing at ATP High School. I have about 280 hours, so I just finished up getting my MBI, CFI, CFAA.
Nice. Thanks for coming.
I'm Jason Roback. I'm private pilot, about 150 some odd hours. I'm sort of halfway to 3/4 through doing my instrument rating.
Excellent.
Jay Lefevre, about 500 hours of total time with a commercial multi-instrument. Haven't flown much in the last couple of years, just trying to get back into it.
Tom Stanek, ATP CFI. I fly King Airs overseas as a contractor.
Nice.
Vince Lawrence, CFAA, Glider CFI, propane, so on, and I've got about 5,000 hours.
Sean Melody, I got a couple hundred hours and working on my IFR.
Great.
Bruce Weiner, my commercial, single, multi, CFAA, getting close to about 1,300 hours. Also involved with Solar Air Patrol Squadron on the field.
Great.
Ray Wells, Civil Air Patrol check pilot, and fly the Cirruses every time I get a chance.
Bob Sneed, military airline. I have a Cessna 185 that I just upgraded to some Garmin Magic that I'm completely confused with and want to learn all about that. What some of these newfangled GPS approaches are.
And IA can help with that big time.
Yeah. Okay.
John?
John Hirschman, mostly retired Challenger corporate pilot, 6,000 or 7,000 hours, and CFAA, and trying to get back to my light plane roots.
David Eames, private pilot, instrument rater, about 600 hours. I have a Turbo 210, and 3 years of license.
Nice.
I'm Gary Myers. I've been flying Part 135 medical flights out of Reno, going to the West Coast, repositioning doctors and nurses for these immediate transplants day and night. And I used to have a pressurized Navajo here, based over here at the Jet Center. Got an office in San Antonio. I go back and forth doing that. I was flying Cheyenne 2s out of Reno, all over the West Coast.
Roger.
Roger Miller, private, single engine land, CE rotor instrument, about 1,400 hours. Flyer Centennial in 77. Cut in aviation used to be.
Ben Barish, commercial, single, multi, working on my CFI. Spent the summer flying skydivers in Ohio.
John Kohler. I was off for about 20 some years. Owned a twin Comanche back in the day and was going to make it a career. Got sidetracked by fire department. But I'm about 6 years from retirement, so started flying about a year ago, and working right now on my commercial multi and commercial single.
Excellent.
Mitch Fish, about 100 hours, private pilot, working on my instrument, just getting around.
All right.
Orlando Barlon, private pilot only, less than 100 hours. Moved here in June, I think. Haven't had a chance to fly, so want to find it out. I work ATC at DIA, and I was at LAX 7 years before that, Santa Monica before that. So just trying to get my feet wet back into the aviation community out here.
Nice.
Carl Reek, I'm dual rated airplanes, helicopters, commercial helicopter, single multi-engine airplane, flight instructor helicopter, former 91 traffic watch, 135 canceled bank checks back in the day, and regional 121.
Ah, excellent. Steve?
Stephen Edwards. I'm a rusty pilot, but I'm getting my instrument rating currently right now. I'm working on that.
Al?
Al Matthews, almost 40 years of flying. Mostly a Cessna guy, but I went to the dark side a year or so ago, and now I learned how to fly Cirrus here, and won't go back.
That's not the dark side.
Well, to some they'll say that.
Yeah, that's where the sun comes out.
Yes.
It's the right side.
Yeah, I used to run a flight school down in Colorado Springs, and sold it and enjoying life.
Excellent.
We do have a nonprofit program in Colorado Springs called High Hopes for Teens, and we use aviation to introduce at-risk and disadvantaged youth to the possibility that they can, even though so many people around them say you can't.
Great, great. So why did I skip over some guys? Because we already know them. They're already members of the club. But I do want to point out in the back we have Kevin. He's an IA instructor. I'm skipping you. Bob, he's an IA instructor. And these guys have tons of experience. And then Bob Stedman, if you don't know Bob Stedman is the owner. You want to say a couple of things?
Oh, just welcome everybody to IA, but I also want to applaud everybody who's using this IMC Club as a way to learn more about flying instruments and aviation decision making and getting some real life experience. The club membership is extremely varied, as you heard as people were introducing themselves. We have everybody from people who are still working on their private pilots to retired airline captains, and the thing that's neat about this place is everybody learns from everybody else, and even the high timers are sitting there and are respecting the attempts by the younger or the less experienced people trying to learn more, because I think that when you get your instrument rating, you're really not fully prepared to go flying instruments, because there's so much that you have to learn, and there's so much that you have to learn to pass the check rate. Charlie, would you like to speak to that? Reason I'm picking on Charlie is how many days ago was it you got your instrument rating? One? Congratulations.
Okay, so now you just stole my thunder.
Oh, did I? I'm
yes,
sorry.
Yes, you did, but that's
no.
okay, because is there anybody who got their instrument rating today? No, I didn't think so. Chuck said you need to give away this book to the most recently certificated instrument pilot, which I know is Charlie. So congratulations. It really is cool because I mean as you'll see with the scenario, we're all going to be talking about maybe our experience, and we've got retired airline guys. We got guys that are private working on their instrument. We got a lot of CFIs in the room. That's great. Thanks for coming. Encourage you to join and have your students join and their oh, no, okay. All right. So a couple of new developments. The first thing is, and he's not here because he's flying, he just ferried something out to North Carolina. Colin Pranger is the poster child of IA because one of the things that Bob and Chuck thought about in '07 and why people quit flight training is because they get an instructor, and what happens? The instructor goes off to the airlines, right? So now you got to start again and again and again. And these guys said, no, we're going to do a team teaching approach. And so you might have a primary instructor, but there are going to be 2 or 3 other guys that know what you're doing and can step in, and we're going to use a syllabus for everybody. So Colin, I took that initial call in whenever it was, 2014, 13. His dad calls, says, I want my son to come up. We stay in Colorado during the month of July, and I want him to come up and get his private pilot certificate. Okay, hand it off to Bob. No, and they said, so they said, okay, he's got to come here with his medical, and he's got to come having passed the knowledge exam. I don't know how many instructors, 5, 6 worked with him. 7 instructors worked with him. He flew 2, 3 times a day. At the end of the month, he had his private pilot certificate. Well, he's come back and he's gotten more certificates and ratings, and now he joined staff a little over a year ago, was it? And he's been promoted to the assistant chief flight instructor. So he's really cranking, and he hates flying the Cirrus. Oh, I mean, yeah, no. Okay. This is close to my heart. Have you guys seen the X-Wing? I know you've been on it, guys been on it. This is a Redbird Crosswind trainer, and unfortunately we had to shut the business down last summer. But it's been resurrected, okay? Last week, the deal was signed. Wings Over the Rockies Museum is getting a donation from Independence Aviation of this trainer. And the cool thing about that is, you know, they're building a building over here at the end of 2-8, and it's going to go in that building as an active pilot device, and we get to train in it again. So I do have it set up in Hangar 2 if you're interested at all to get a session on it. I know you probably want a refresher even though you keep winning the contest. It's up and ready to go. So that's kind of cool. And then Tim McDonald is ill, and we all did a card for him. And was it you that told me he saw it, or Chuck? Chuck saw him in Perfect Landing or something. He said, hey, thanks a lot for the card. It meant a lot to us. So those are my only new developments. Now I'm going to kind of turn it over to Bob a little bit to talk about the questions.
And one of the things that I think is neat about IMC is these scenarios are kind of developed, and then it's good and it's bad because they don't give you what the end point was of the scenario. So you kind of have to think about it. So it's not just answering exactly what you have to do to file an alternate, which is cut and dried. There's a lot of soft stuff here, so we have the opportunity to talk about these things. So the question for the evening is: you are to descend via clearance, and the controller vectors you off the procedure for traffic. Are you going to continue your descend via altitude? This is mostly for GPS arrivals. Okay. Typically larger, faster airplanes, but I know some of you are going to have a vision jet here before too awfully long, so you're going to be dealing with this. Okay, what's everybody think?
I would ask.
Okay.
What?
I would ask if they want me to continue to send via, or if they want me to level off.
Always a good course of action to ask if you don't know. Anybody else know the answer? Does everybody understand that if you are on a GPS arrival and you get the descend via clearance, that there are different altitudes at each of the waypoints on that arrival, okay? And they're hard numbers, okay? Because when they tell you to descend via, they're expecting you to do exactly that, exactly what the arrival says. So now you got something real cool. So you come in on the Dun 2 arrival, going up to Jeffco. It swings you right through the top of the Colorado Springs' airspace, and then over where all the rough air is on the front range, okay, going into Jeffco. Oftentimes they'll cut you off, give you a headache. What do you do with that altitude? If you're coming up on a segment that you're supposed to descend to 16,000, let's say, what do you do now? Okay, let's do it this way.
Let's get the front row going.
I'll bite, I'll say no, but I'm gonna ask.
Okay.
I would say that if in doubt,
That covers
you know, off the original course, then that waypoint isn't gonna be there. So if you're supposed to cross at a certain altitude at that waypoint, but you're vectored off, you're not going to that. So I would have to say no.
Okay.
But I would certainly ask.
Well, we got 2 no's and 3 asks.
I was going to say, if you're currently maintaining your altitude, then you stay at that. You don't descend any further, given the vectors. But if you're still descending to the assigned altitude, you continue that descent to that altitude, then wait for further instructions from ATC.
Okay.
Yes, but you can't use the altitude on the procedure if you left the lateral navigation.
Okay.
You just can't.
Okay. We had another hand back here.
Your reset, vertical reset.
I stopped the descent because I don't know where the terrain is with the new vectors.
Okay, and that's good logic, Dave. That's really good. You know, and the fact of the issue is that everybody who said no is correct. In other words, once they take, go ahead. See, you didn't let me practice this. Keep telling you. The only time I practice my speeches is when they're extemporaneous.
Right.
Okay. You're exactly what she said is you're not laterally and vertically off the procedure. The controller needs to issue you an altitude, and that as your responsibility. If it doesn't give it to you, then you have to ask for it. Clearance to descend via authorizes you to vertically and laterally navigate on a star, RNS star, etc. Okay. And you can descend from those previously assigned altitudes. How many of you guys have actually done one of these arrivals? They're pretty slick. It sure cuts down on the communication and everything else. Makes you have to work if you don't have VNAV on your autopilot, and you're kind of scrambling all that. But man, I love them. I kind of looked at them kind of negatively at first, but man, I think they're great now. So that cleared everybody now? It's a complication. It's a little bit different procedure, and they're putting more responsibility on the pilot.
So this started out as a star?
I'm sorry?
It started out as a star?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on that?
Hey, Bob, you might talk just a little bit about the correct read back to a descend or climb via the.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell it?
Well, when they like you're cleared to descend via the arrival out here, you have to repeat those words back exactly that same way. If you hem and haw, guess what they'll do? They'll repeat the same thing to you until you read it back correctly. You are cleared to descend via the arrival.
So if you're handed off to somebody, if you just tell them that you're on the done to arrival, you're good. Okay, again, it's short since now. I was out here the other day flying, and some guy, it didn't sound like a local. He was been told to taxi to 10, and he says, Roger, taxi. And the controller says, Roger, I need taxi to and hold short on 10. He says, Roger, I'm taxiing to 10. And he just went through about 3 or 4 times. The controller says, we're going to keep doing this till you get it right. They're very, very sticky here at Centennial. It was kind of funny over the air. Okay.
So if you have your iPad, you might see if you can locate this approach. St. Pete Clearwater, so P-I-E. And it's the North Bay Visual 1-8 left. P-I-E. North Bay Visual 1-8 left. So, a visual approach charted. Can you guys think of where there's a charted visual approach in Colorado?
Aspen.
Roaring Fork or Iowa? I went to get my iPad and I don't know what to do now.
I have it up there for
I
you.
see that, that's why I'm standing in front of the camera. Should we lay out a question for him?
No?
Okay. So what are the requirements here for you to do? When cleared for the North Bay visual approach, aircraft will proceed visually from over the power station. Put it out there. Heading 196 degrees direct to the Causeway Bridge down there. And then a right turn to intercept the final approach course for runway 18 left. That's kind of a nice confusing little deal because now they want you to intercept the localizer also on the way in. So you're going to be busy in the cockpit and busy looking outside as well. Not authorized when the tower is not in operation. And look at the weather minimums. At least a 2,100 foot ceiling and a good 3 miles visibility. 3 miles doesn't seem like a lot to me. Looking at that kind of stuff. And of course I have to wonder if there's an old Tampa Bay, is there a new Tampa Bay? But that's just me.
Is there another airport that's very close to that one?
It's a good question.
There's,
I don't see one on this chart.
How about Tampa to the north?
It seems like there would be because of that west end, we should grab it because there's not landings even, southwest of this one, but it's supposed to be over here, very close to the runways.
Yeah, Tampa's
Similar
across
to that. Looks
McKnight.
like there's something nearby.
McKnight's between those two bridges.
So when you're flying, let's say you're flying into St. Pete, Clearwater, how many of you brief every approach the day before you're flying it? Okay. And I think one of Chuck's points on this, how many of you would brief the visual? And that's a legitimate approach that if you don't fly that approach, you can get in trouble, right? If they clear you for that?
And I would add to that, as I'm working with people, both brand new students, but also experienced pilots that are now getting used to the GPS. I mean, like you're talking about getting your 750 in there, which is a great box, by the way. What I see different now than back when I learned to fly is that we used to over-prepare for our flights. We'd start planning them a week ahead and we'd pull out the sectionals and we would draw pictures of the runway diagrams and we'd guess about how we're going to get into the pattern and everything else. I don't see that happening anymore because we have these quick electronics available to us and we can pull this stuff up just like this if you're good at it, okay? And I don't see the preparation the week or the night before that I used to see. And it works great as long as you know how to get into the box, but what if you don't? What if you get something that's just a little bit different, a little bit that you didn't expect? And I don't know where that North Bay visual, if that's going to be in the chart database.
Not.
It's not. There's an expert right there from Jefferson, okay? So if you haven't found this thing ahead of time, and they give you the North Bay visual, and you're going,
It's not in the jet chart?
It's in the chart, it's not in the database.
Oh, it's not in the
So you're not gonna be able to pull it up.
Oh, really?
So I see a drop-off in advanced preparation for a lot of this stuff, and it kind of works okay, but what happens when you leave that iPad up on the dash in the sun and it goes out on you?
You pull up your second iPad.
Or now the Apple
and your
Watch.
Mophie.
Anyway, do you see that happening in your flying at all, and people you fly with at all? David, you do?
I don't see a 1-8 right on that little airport diagram.
There's a no limit
Yeah.
that says not to call it that anymore.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Way to go, John.
The 176 localizer going into the thing is you can't, it's hard to see, but right at the end of the dotted lines there as you're going in with the localizer and stuff, you'll see there's a 1-8 left right there.
And I will tell you that if I'm going into this airport, and I got a couple hours in my logbook, and I see 3 miles visibility, I'm going to be asking for an approach.
I don't want to floundering around in unfamiliar territory with 3 miles visibility. That's just me. Any other thoughts on that?
I thought, so for you guys in here, so they give you that approach and you can't find it, I think you need to say to the controller,
Unable.
Yeah,
Unable.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
and what would they do now? I'm just curious if anybody, what do you think they would, controller would do?
They deal with it. I'm
You know-
100% confident they would.
You know what,
Yeah, and I might preface it with, I'm not from around here, okay, you can tell by my lack of an accent, okay? Can you help me out here? Yes,
the
David?
problem I would have with that, Bob, is everywhere I go, clear for the visual, 1-8 left, and there is no approach. So if they say, clear for the visual, 1-8 left, I don't expect there to be a chart.
Okay. There's an issue there. What does it mean when you are cleared for the visual approach?
Means I have an airport in sight, and now I'm just flying the airplane
That's correct.
basically VFR.
So for example, if you listen to the ATIS here, you know, sky is clear, visual approach in use. A lot of people don't understand that has significant meaning. You know, if they say the visual approach is in use, that means you got at least a 5,000 foot ceiling and 5 miles visibility. Okay, and then I, as an instrument pilot, I'm anticipating I'm not going to have to fly an actual instrument approach unit. When I tell them I got the airport in sight and I've got to have it in sight, then they'll clear me for the visual, and then you know, my headings and my altitudes are my own responsibility. So in this case here, they would be clearing you specifically for the North Bay visual approach. Okay, you might not see the airport, okay, until 3 miles. At which point in time you'd say, hey, I got the airport in sight, and then they would clear you for the visual approach. That makes sense?
It does, but it would confuse me if it
Yeah.
happened in the air, especially before I just saw this.
Yeah, well, and that's a really good point, because, and that's why Chuck came up with this scenario to talk about it, because you got to think a little bit about it, and hopefully the night before or the week before you could at least take a look at this so that you knew what to expect.
My question would be, how prominent is that tower? Because that's only 650 feet, I think.
Well, if you worked on your private pilot's license with me and doing dead reckoning and piloting, and you used a tower for a waypoint, we wouldn't get very far. Because I can't identify differences in towers unless it's the 2,000 foot one out by Akron. So to give you a better answer, I'm going to say that it's probably pretty damn obvious. Otherwise, I don't think they would have used it. That's a guess on my part.
Well, the power station is where it starts, though. You're talking about the tower, though. The tower is just there for a reference. It's not part of the procedure.
Right.
See, the power station's down on the end of the peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
The power station will be obvious. It's going to have, you know, generators and smokestacks, and it's going to.
There's going to be a lot of concrete there.
It's going to be wires and stuff.
Sparks maybe.
Wires stuff.
You sure?
Pretty sure they'd have that at power station.
Transformers, maybe?
Stuff, a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, when you look at this, though, if you only have 3 miles of visibility, you're making the turn over the Causeway Bridge, and you're just inside of 4 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably still don't have the airport in sight.
Probably not.
But now you're flying that, maybe that 30 or 45 degree angle over to intercept the final.
And they've got you fairly low, 900 foot recommended.
And it's going to start to come into view.
Yeah.
You almost have to fly this with 3 miles of visibility. You almost have to fly it on instruments. You're going to fly that radial. And when you see D4, you look out and you say, there's the bridge. Now I'm going to turn right, bring up a localizer.
The tower's 600 feet, 650 feet, 900 recommended, 2 miles.
Yeah, don't miss it.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is
Yes, sir.
Just a question about terminology here. Where they say recommended, is that because this is a visual approach? And that's what that term is. Okay.
And this doesn't have a mist line, does it?
No, because it's not an instrument approach.
Right.
But your point is a darn good one, Jack. You know,
Well,
if I'm down to 3 miles,
Taylor prompted it.
if you're flying this with 3 miles visibility and 2,100 foot, I mean, all of you experienced guys will absolutely agree with me that when you have a ceiling, it's exactly flat and perfect. It doesn't vary at all, right?
Yeah. Sure. It's like these
That's why
tiles.
they call it a ceiling.
That's right. Yeah. How often have you had a ceiling here and a ceiling here within on either side of the airplane? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I know this is an NOS chart. Does the jet chart show a lead-in radio or lead-in off that localizer for the turn?
Who's the jet guy?
No.
Okay.
No lead-in radio on there. The only place I would expect a lead-in radio would be on a DMER, wouldn't it?
True.
Well, you're
Doesn't
coming down to
arrival
016 radio.
Oh, you're talking about moving over to the low? On the visual to the final?
Yeah, just to give you a heads up.
Yeah, no, there's no lead-in radio. It just goes from 196 to 176.
And they're not literally saying to fly the localizer in.
No.
They're saying turn right to intercept the final approach course. And that's really kind of a visual thing. It's not, well, I'd have the localizer in there to help find it.
They do have a waypoint there, and
But wouldn't you back up that visual with the localizer just in
Absolutely.
case?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
So what do you do if you need to go miss? Do you have a 2,100 foot ceiling? You just stay below it?
You'd have to, yeah, because you're no longer on an instrument approach, so you don't have the protection of the procedure, or the system for that matter.
So they don't list the DME on the...
oh, actually, no, they do. They do.
Where
There's DME along that as well.
do you see that?
Along, so that
Oh.
196 radio.
Yeah, okay.
So that
The
should
jet
be-
charts really show it much better. And also, something we haven't talked about, radar required. Duh, there's, we say, well, I've never been here before and I can't see the runway. Can you give me some vectors?
You should invest in some jet charts here, Taylor.
Yeah, it's amazing the difference.
Did you invite him?
Oh, it's just,
He's gonna buy dinner, right?
Well, yeah, there's no header on this one. There's under 42, but you don't have to take that approach.
That's also very true.
It's larger when you're saying you don't like it. I don't like the houses. I don't want this one here. Yeah, you don't have to take that approach.
That's right.
Then you will be.
Exactly.
But
So in
if
less
you,
than a half
if you
mile,
fly
you got
that,
100 feet.
that ILS to 1.8, I just looked at it, you have to have ADF to fly that approach.
Unless you have a GPS with the current database.
But it says ADF required on the plate.
Yeah, GPS is authorized to overlay, but it has to be a current database.
I have a legitimate question this time, Bob.
I'll be the judge of that.
No, it's a real question I have. So if I'm flying in there under VFR, could I expect this to be my clearance as I'm coming into the airspace?
Yeah, I would say so.
So this is not something that I would just expect as the instrument pilot coming in on an instrument flight plan.
Now, what they will say to you is the same thing they do with athletes. Are you familiar with the Roaring Fork visual? Are you familiar with the North Bay visual? Okay, and you have to answer in the affirmative for them to give that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I
know. You're going dog eat it.
My guess is this is like a noise abatement thing to keep you from flying directly over all those houses right there on the bay. So it keeps you out over the water.
It does kind of keep you over the water, doesn't it?
Yeah, could be.
It also helps expediting traffic. Aircraft doesn't have to fly full approach. The controller knows what you're going to do, and you can have another guy, same mouse guy.
Helps the C-17s to land at MacDill. Remember the C-17 that didn't land at MacDill?
Oh, ready?
Landed somewhere else? Yeah.
Yeah.
No. It was day.
No, Knight Airport. Scenario.
Yeah.
This is coming from the EAA IMC Club.
Welcome to this month's IMC Club meeting. Safety and proficiency through education and experience. Today's club meeting, what's your attitude? Think about your experience, your currency, and proficiency. Whether you're an experienced instrument pilot or someone who just got their instrument rating, try to picture yourself in this discussion and what actions you would have taken. The exercise today, you'll be flying a Piper PA-32 Cherokee 6 with a basic Legacy 6-pack and a handheld GPS receiver. You're flying to an airport of your choice. Please choose any familiar airport in your area that is equipped with an ILS. You're en route and about 50 nautical miles from your destination when the attitude indicator starts showing a false reading of about 10 to 15 degrees to the left. You inform ATC of the issue, and they give you a block altitude of 7,000 to 9,000 feet to stay out of the clouds. You disengage your autopilot since it's unable to hold the wings level. Along your route, you check surrounding airports to see which has the best landing conditions. However, all the airfields en route have low ceilings and poor visibility. Your destination with a ceiling of 1,700 feet seems to be the best choice. Since this is your home base, you're very comfortable with the airport. You try shooting the ILS once with no luck. You are able to keep the wings level, but could not stay on the ILS path. For the second approach, ATC vectors you out further and tries to help you set up a stable approach. During the approach, you almost lose control of the plane and struggle to keep the wings level. You're constantly losing and gaining altitude. You're at 2,000 feet when ATC calls for you to go missed and climb to 5,000 feet. What would you do? Is there anything you would have done differently before shooting this approach?
Obviously, after listen to thoughts, comments, observations. Yes, sir.
Take a Post-it or credit card or something and cover up the attitude indicator so you're not tempted to look at it.
That's a great idea. That's a good suggestion. What else?
I would ask what their MVA is around the airport.
EMDA?
MVA, minimum vectoring altitude.
Yeah, I'm going to guess it'll probably be a little bit higher than where he's at. Probably about 7, I'm guessing. Yes, sir.
So his attitude indicator was not working,
That is correct.
and his autopilot then is coupled to the attitude indicator?
I don't know.
Why
that.
did he turn off his autopilot?
I asked the same question. Typically, they're hooked to the turn coordinator for direction, but I don't know on this one.
Okay.
I actually think I might have flown the airplane once. I think I recognize it.
Well, he or she has a handheld GPS, it may have an attitude indicator.
Good. Good thought. I don't know if that one does, but yeah, a lot of them do. Bring up the iPad, right?
That's when airport is.
Yeah, it's just less.
Good. Okay. Well, you know, to my way of thinking, it really kind of does, David. I mean, you know, I don't know what everybody's flying here, but we don't see too many that old airplane with that type of equipment anymore. And one of the first questions I asked is, you know, backup attitude indicator. You know, how many hours are on that vacuum pump? How well maintained is the thing? You know, that's a pretty old piece of equipment. And what is the background? And that's all to try to preempt this type of an issue. But I think those are extremely good questions.
Well, all I had was a backup GPS, right?
That's what it said. Handheld.
Handheld, but not a, we don't know if we had an iPad.
No, we don't.
Legacy, yeah, it's guys too.
What other thoughts? Yes, sir.
Did it mention like how much fuel you got on board?
I don't think it did, but I'd assume it was a fairly short flight. I would assume fuel's not an issue.
I just maintain VFR then.
Yeah, he was out of the clouds in the beginning.
Yeah, he was VMC, right?
Right.
You'd like to declare the emergency.
I tell you what, you know, losing an attitude, I'm more afraid of losing an attitude indicator than I am an engine or a twin engine aircraft. Okay. There's been too many people that I think probably are better pilots than I am that have lost the attitude indicator and lost their lives. It scares the hell out of me. I'm just partial panelist. Yes, sir.
Could have asked for a no gyro approach.
Yeah, that was some, Aaron made that, you know, is there a place where I can get that? Okay. You know, that kind of goes with the minimum vectoring altitude. How low can you get me? What else?
Does the military still have PAR approaches?
Damn few. Darn few.
Cheyenne.
Does Cheyenne still have one?
Yeah, we did it, we flew it.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Recently?
Yeah, well, recently was last year.
Okay.
Yeah, just last year.
How much trouble is this guy in?
Well,
Essentially,
is he in visual or is he?
he has to go through a cloud layer.
Yeah, he has to go through a cloud layer, but he's got 1700.
If you come out of the cloud upside down at 1700.
Well, you're not supposed to be upside down. So, well, that's
Emergency.
you know,
I agree 100%.
Then you own the airspace.
How much experience does he have?
I don't know, but I would say probably.
Is he susceptible to?
Here's the issue with that.
supposed to be
How much
new.
experience does he have, but how long has it been since he actually did a partial panel approach with the added indicator covered up, doing mag compass turn? Does anybody know what a mag compass turn is anymore? GPS.
How susceptible is he to vertigo?
You do.
My instructor made me do those.
Yeah, I just did them on
You're welcome.
I think in the scenario, you're supposed to think about yourself as the pilot and what in your level and your skill and how you would handle it. I think that's sort of the intent.
How many of you would be just totally calm after almost losing losing control of the airplane? Think of the adrenaline rush you'd be having right
sure.
there. 2,000 feet, they cleared you to 5. What are you gonna do?
Oh yeah, now he's doing a performance mirror. He's been told to go around, so he's gonna put the power in, go ahead and do a pitch up. He thinks, okay.
I mean, the big question when you lose the attitude indicator, is there anywhere you can, anywhere where there is no cloud ceiling below you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you have to fly 100 miles out of your way, if you can just stay
If you can stay
VFR
out.
all the way to the runway,
Right.
is the only really safe thing to do.
Right.
That was sort of my thought is, use the controller as, your help and tell them specifically, what can you do for me here?
Right.
I'm in trouble.
And we've seen a couple of reports, where the controller says, "I'm going to declare you an emergency."
I think your first response was declare an emergency. I mean, I think that's a pretty good direction to go.
And that doesn't get you in trouble. I think a lot of people think it gets you in trouble. That's what saves you a lot of times. It does not get you in trouble.
I declared an emergency at 24,000 feet and went off airway and going down like a street out of hell and declared the emergency, and I never even talked to the FAA. They didn't come see me. They came look at the airplane. So that,
They'd rather just certainly stay safe and get on the ground in one piece.
so Paul has a good point here. What would you individually do? Okay. Think about that a second. Yeah, we can say, okay, they should have done this, they should have done that. First of all, I think we've got something going here. That's an emergency. If I lose my attitude indicator, that's an emergency.
Yep.
Period. Okay. If I lose my PFD, that's an emergency. That's all there is.
I did. And going into Aspen, I lost PFD and FD. Try that one.
Yeah, try that one.
Into Aspen.
Did you get the reset?
No, but you won't believe what the problem was.
You get the demo.
No, it was, now, I don't know how many fly into Aspen, but it was one of those typical, like this days.
You get that.
And I had my hand up there and I didn't realize I
Gotta get a
had
switch.
I just turned all the brightness completely down.
Oh.
Dead, black, everything went
We
black.
saw that, didn't we, Aaron?
Went totally black. And I said, well, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with this. And so, luckily I was VFR.
So let's take this one step further. Let's say that the guy finally gets up above the clouds, and he knows that he cannot successfully fly this approach. He's got an latitude indicator. He hasn't practiced partial panel and gyro turns, mag compass turns, in forever. What are his options? How's he going to get out of this problem? It's not a Cirrus. Forever was talking about Cirrus, so there's no parachute.
Keep it pulling.
Keep reaching for something. I was flying in Malibu a couple of years ago, brand new Malibu, right after takeoff. Sort of got 300 feet off the ground up at Erie. It started running rougher than a cob. And I kept looking at the ceiling. Where's my parachute?
Yeah.
What are his options?
Did you say he's back up between the layers now?
He's between layers now. But now he's got nowhere to go.
All right, but he's got a layer there and he can't find an opening.
Can't find an opening. And they're still telling him, he's finding out that is Destination Airport. It's got the best weather of what's around.
Well, again, you talk to ATC and see what they can do to help you as much, and find an opening.
And ATC comes back and says, I don't know what to do, buddy. Sir, you're raising your hand.
Well, I was gonna say, it sounded like you got pretty close with the ILS.
Call your
You know,
family.
and I think I would try the ILS again.
Okay. Gather your wits about you.
Because you've got, you got your ILS indicator.
Fly around a little bit, maybe get further out on the
Get vectors all the way in and have
pick
a,
up the glide slope a little sooner, practice a little bit coming in.
Sure.
That's an option.
Know your power settings.
Know your power settings,
Yeah.
okay?
If you can stabilize the airplane, you can literally let go of the controls, drop the throttle and go down.
Trim the thing so that it's going as straight and level as possible,
Let the
and
airplane
then start and restart the approach. I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Okay, let's take that. He tries one more time.
Yeah.
Okay? And he's 100 feet into the clouds and he starts to lose it again and he bails out again.
Well, what's the ceiling?
1700.
1,700. How deep? How thick is the cloud layer he's coming through?
I'm going to guess from the scenario maybe 2,500 feet, something like that.
2,500 feet?
2,500 feet?
2,500 to 1,700.
there'll be 5 minutes in the clouds.
Well,
So he's got to go through 2,000 feet of clouds.
Okay, so 2,000 feet of clouds.
Not on that airplane.
That takes you a little bit to get through that.
That was not a bad suggestion. It has a little bit visual to play with. Trim the airplane for a nice descent and just let it go through.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
ducks do.
trim it as, get to where you're visually you can see, and trim it as good as you possibly can, and then let it descend. And
I've got a little trick coming for you.
oh, a little trick.
Any other
Some-
suggestions?
Well,
Doesn't he have a
okay,
turn
now,
Yes,
us
he would.
idiot aerobatic pilots, what we do, because we have a string out there, okay, I put a string up and say, which way is it leaning?
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds silly.
Streets.
I know that sounds silly, but that's how we know when we're
Sure.
going backwards.
Absolutely.
Jack could just spin to the bottom of the clouds. He'd break out in the spin.
That's right. I mean,
At
I've
night.
done so many, and if you
Yes,
get out
sir.
of the spins,
You learned a long time ago, long before class, I flew a Piper 6 light, or
Mhm.
6 like that. Why don't you just, for every inch of manifold pressure you drop off, you come down 100 feet per minute.
Okay.
Look at your approach chart. What's your ground speed?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to be at to fly that?
Because he does have a GPS. If he's got it set up, he'd have a ground speed of some form.
Yeah.
So you look at your approach plate and see what is your ground speed to get, that airspeed at that descent angle to get to the airport. Back it up.
You could ask ATC if there's anybody there that's a flight instructor, might have some advice to give me a lesson.
Okay, so you're the flight instructor. What are you going to tell this guy to do?
yeah.
He walked right into that one.
Well, if you confirm that, well, first tell him to cover up the attitude indicator that's not working, because he might still be keeping that in the scan and goofing himself out.
It's hard to take it out unless you cover it up. You're absolutely right.
And then confirm that he is able to, in the visual, hold the heading and his DG's working and his airspeed's working and his turn and bank's working. And then,
Let's say it's a vacuum pump that went out and now his heading indicator's not working either.
Well, that's a different problem. The other thing is descend using the compass on an easterly westerly heading.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Descend using the compass.
Okay.
Then, on an easterly or westerly heading.
Okay. You're on the right track for what I'd like to do with this guy, but it's not an easterly or westerly heading.
North and south.
2 out of 4.
The only way I can think of to keep the wings level on the approach is you radio in and find some kind individual who's coming in on an IFR approach and park yourself about 500 feet behind them. Follow them down.
Formation fly in.
Work for Jimmy Stewart.
Well,
If it's me and lead, I'm going as fast as I can.
Get close. 100 feet. Follow them down.
Follow them down, there you go.
and then,
Any other ideas?
once you're ready to set down, either have them reduce the power and maintain the airspeed, or add flaps and hold the airspeed or something like that.
So here's the problem. He can't fly the airplane. He gets in the clouds and loses it. So let's take him out of the equation.
Turn the autopilot
Tell him to turn to a heading of south on the magnetic compass. Pull the power all the way off. Go full flaps, full nose up trim, and keep heading 180 on the mag compass with your feet and don't touch nothing. You'll descend at about 70 knots and 700 foot per minute.
Till you get below the
Until you get
1700.
Yep.
Then you're in visual, and then you can.
Then you bring the power back in. And yes, sir.
How does, I know you say don't touch anything, but, you know, so that means no turbulence, we're assuming.
If he is holding 180 on the mag compass with his rudder, it's going to stay wings level.
Because he sort of demonstrated that he can't hold it level.
That's
Because
my
he-
conclusion on
So
this.
what
It's
you're
probably
saying,
because he's introducing his own control inputs
Yeah.
when they're wrong.
yeah,
And when he's in the clouds, his mind's playing tricks on him.
sure.
But if you go full nose up trim, full flaps, power off, pull 180 on the mag compass, that plane's just going to settle down like that.
Yep.
And
Why
then-
are you heading with 180?
Because of lead and lag. That way you
Yeah.
won't get behind it. As soon as it moves, you bring it back.
But around here, you have to be careful because of the Palmer Divide monument.
Well,
You
this
would
guy-
have to be.
This guy's pretty well pooched anyway. Okay, think about that a second. Your feet will hold that thing, wings will stay level, and you float down about as soft as you can in that situation. Because right now, he has demonstrated he can't fly a needle ball on airspeed. He can't keep the wings up. Give that a try in the airplane next time you go out. Just see what you think. I've tried it in several. It was a trick question on my airplane flight instructor check ride 45 years ago, whatever the hell that was.
Did they have compasses back then, Bob?
That's all we had. That's all we had.
They hadn't invented kerosene yet.
Kerosene.
That's all we had, Kevin. Okay.
But what would you do, let's say now, rolling back, your attitude indicator's going back. Would you even shoot to your approach, or what would you do differently before you went down and then lost control? Is there anything you would plan for,
That you would plan for?
or do differently?
Buy a Cirrus.
Stay home.
There's one in every.
Always.
Taylor's question is a good. Well, there's really two questions. What could he have done to prevent this? Okay, and then now what would he do? Okay. I think somebody made the suggestion to go further out on the ILS,
Right.
where you're in clear air, and just kind of get set up on the glide slope and the localizer, and fly the needles a little bit. Okay. But Kevin's right. I mean, when you're in the clouds and you've lost that spatial orientation, it's hard as heck to keep a light finger on those controls.
Your inner ears telling you all kinds of shit.
Say again?
Your inner ears telling you all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely. And we had a guy that I knew had to do an IFR, he was IFR rated, forgot to turn his pitot heat on in his Cirrus, okay, and got iced up. He was 17,000 feet, and when he started hearing the terrain alert, he pulled the parachute, and they were able to recreate his flight path during this period of time. And he put on an air show that Patty Wagstaff would have been, okay? And he didn't know it. He didn't know it. I mean, he was up and down doing chandelles and lazy eights and split S's and everything else. So, that's why I say if I lose my attitude indicator, if I lose my PFD, I'm declaring an emergency. And that's me, okay? So, I think one of the things I would say with this, how current was this guy? Truly current. And when was the last time he actually practiced partial panel approaches? Flying, basic attitude instrument flying using needle ball and airspeed. How long has it been? Because that's a skill that erodes and evaporates. Yes, ma'am.
If this guy was dropping into the clouds and got disoriented and decided to bail and come back out of the clouds, how did he know which way was up?
I think that's a legitimate question. I mean,
Better luck than judgment, or what?
Could be,
Yeah.
could be.
You know,
Well,
because
that's
all of a
what-
sudden, the whole reason he's bailing is because he doesn't, you know, he doesn't know where he is, so how did he know how to get back?
He looks for the
Practice a lot of manual flying
Yeah.
approaches.
Well, that's a really good point. Now, I don't think there's a very good autopilot in this Cherokee 6, at least there wasn't the one I used to fly. But,
It's actually fun.
pardon?
It's actually fun.
Oh, yeah, real fun. Oh my God.
It's fun when you don't have to count on it, but I'm saying it is fun to do it instead of relying on the autopilot.
That's,
I noticed in a picture further back, there's a white knot in the middle. It's a Century Ultimate 3.
Right. How good are those?
Not so good.
And maybe when you took the glide slope and localizer out of the picture, he was able to hold a heading and airspeed.
Well, really, all he's got to do is to break out, and he's got 1,700 feet. So after he breaks out, if he's within 4 or 5 miles of the airport, he can get a vector then, visually.
But if he's upside down when he gets there.
Well, that's true, but what I'm saying is, if he just keep his wings level and break out, he doesn't have to follow the localizer.
That's the problem with keeping your wings level.
It's got heading and nav mode.
Yeah.
That
When
right
you
there
throw
is
in
the problem.
When you throw in the glide slope and localizer, then you're not just doing the wings level and the heading.
But yeah, I think.
Don't get me wrong,
I
Cherokee
think
6 is
you're-
a great little airplane. One of my
I think
first
you're
clients
right,
when I
freaking-
left the corporate world and started
Well,
flying
cloud
full time, bought
I guess, or by
really
golf.
tired looking little
And if
Cherokee
you
6.
come out of the cloud deck
And
and
he
you're like
maintained
this,
it well, and he's flown it all over the
Well,
place,
do
Canada,
this.
Mexico, all over the United States.
and do it as
It's a
fast as
hauler.
you can.
No
So I
way in the
agree.
aisles.
260 or 300? Was it a
It was a 260.
I'm still confused why you suggest the 180 heading, because usually it will have to overshoot during the corrections, but if you're on a 090, then there's no correction in it, because it's going to roll out
Mhm.
whatever it is.
But just want to go in the reverse. Well, if you're on a 180, it leads, so you can bring it right back in. I would, to your point, if he did nothing, okay, and just let it go down in my scenario, that would be better than trying to fly when he couldn't.
And it wouldn't stall out?
No, because you just take your hands off. It's not going to stall.
So are you
Okay, you
suggesting
let the airplane fly itself now.
the compass is gonna be very sensitive,
Mhm.
090, so little bang's gonna cause it to dive off?
And you're going to bring it right back
Okay.
With your feet.
with your feet. Yes. You know, that's another thing. People use the autopilot too much and they don't fly. They also don't use the rudder enough, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, these airplanes, they don't have much of a rudder.
Well, what I tell people is the ailerons and the elevator don't move very often, but they move big distances. The rudder hardly moves at all, but it should be being used all the time. If I'm hand flying, I'm holding the heading with the rudder.
Right.
That's easier, and I'm lazy.
Oh, yeah.
How about an iPad with the Stratus?
Oh, yeah.
Garmin with the GDL? Right?
Do you think Amazon can get it there before I run out of gas?
What was that, Kevin?
Do you think Amazon can get it there before I run out of gas?
You know what, with the drones, they might be able to deliver it.
Right. Bring the drone up here.
Yeah, bring the drone up, deliver it.
And flight information all the way down.
Yeah, follow the drone down.
Has anybody in the room experienced an attitude or vacuum system failure in the suit?
Not in IMC.
Autopilot failure.
You know,
I'm wondering if it was
I
an
have
attitude.
that, and I also have a handheld. And I couldn't imagine flying without the Stratus and the iPad. It really, I've gotten to live through a total electrical failure, and I've gotten to live through a failed vacuum pump. And the iPad is a really welcome thing to have.
You can also get synthetic vision on 4-plane.
Yeah, you can.
It's
Yeah.
great.
That has an attitude.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you can take a little thing and
That's
you
why
can set it up on the ground.
I'm in the service and I still have.
I've flown this-
Oh, yeah.
The Stratus,
Yeah.
the Stratus has it too, and I've got my.
That
iPad.
for flight is that with the AHRS in it is, I mean, I lost all the lights inside the airplane on a very dark night. And I turned on the AHRs, and I had all I needed to get home.
It's amazing, isn't it? I wish I was 20 years younger. Okay, here's
With the new
here's
G6,
yeah.
boy, I tell you what, you don't even have to do anything, it just automatically talks back and forth.
Well, the point of these scenarios that we get with IMC is they don't give us an answer, which is what is kind of fun because it generates this kind of discussion and debate. Okay, and I think that's very, very helpful. We learn to fly instruments to pass a check ride, but that's not the experience that you get by being here and sharing stories and actually getting out there and going places. It's irreplaceable. So, yours.
Nice.
Thank you.
Good discussion. We do this every month. It's pretty cool. So just real quick, what is the IMC Club? Well, Radek Wierzykowski, I'm now pronouncing it right after 5 years. He founded this because he was recently instrument rated, and then he was flying back east and they gave him all kinds of stuff to do, and he was like, I'd like to be able to talk with some people. And so he and some buddies got together, started talking. They thought, hey, this is a good idea. I'm taking some value of this and talking with people. And so he founded it several years ago, and I believe it's 2 years ago in November, the EAA said, hey, we want your program to be part of our pilot proficiency program, and they made him manager of flight proficiency. So IMC Club, if any of you have been to AirVenture, there's something called the Pilot Proficiency Center, and the IMC Club was the spearhead of putting that together. What they do is very incredible. Last year they set up 14 Redbird flight simulators, 30 simulation scenarios you could fly, and it's just incredible the activity going through. They put, I think, 1,600 people through there last year, so it's pretty cool. In order to be a member of the IMC Club, you have to be a member of EAA. How many of you are already members? You get the EAA member benefits. And then for our local club, this is a great example of the meetings that we do. Every month, second Tuesday of every month. So we'll have the meetings, and you've seen we have an approach that can be very challenging. We have the question that comes from EAA, and then the scenarios. Well, EAA has scenarios, but we also, anybody familiar with pilot workshops? This is, I mean, it's great stuff. And those guys put together great scenarios. We had another one where Colin had an encounter with icing. And so we just put a scenario together to discuss an icing encounter. So we get a lot of feedback from the members and try and do things that are interesting for you guys as well. Tours and activities. Today we did Centennial Tower. Thursday I'm doing a Tracon tour. How many of you have been to Tracon? Pretty cool. And I actually have some space open on that tour. So it's going Thursday at 1 p.m. If you're interested at all to join us, let me know and I'll put you on the list. We do Denver Center tours on occasion. Jefferson tours we've done. Although there's not much to see with all the printing stuff going. We're very much into we're very much into simulator training. Those of you who fly a Cirrus, if you've never been in the Frasca sim that we have and pulled the chute, it's something you got to do. We also have a touch trainer, which is configurable for Beach Twins, Bonanza, the Cessna line, so all the 172s, 182s, 206 or 208, one of the, I think it's a 206. So, and that's out in the room there. Great training.
And with each of those airplanes, we do different avionics packages, whether it's G1000 or your visual round dial or 430s or whatever.
We can't do a Cherokee 6, but we could get close. There is a discount for IA instructors. So if you want to get with one in the sim, there's a discount available. FAA Safety Wings credit. And then if you're flying a lot and you're with an instructor, an IA instructor, there's a potential that you could get signed off for your flight review or your IPC. So, and then we have a lot of fun. Again, we do things a little differently. Pizza dinner every month. We do have beer and wine and also soda pops. So a lot of different things. This shows you the simulators. And then also there's a discount on the X-Wing. And then for those of you who fly something that we don't have, Lisa probably has it at Precision or at Advanced Aviation, and we have an arrangement with her. So you do a lot over there, don't you, Bob? The dues are $40 a year for EAA, and then we're $35 a month, or if you pay for the full year, it's $350, and it sort of gives the breakdown. Bob, could you grab on the table, there's some info sheets and apps. So we are a membership organization. We would love to have you join us and contribute and just kind of have some fun as well. So with that, are there any questions about it? David, thank you. He led today, he walked right up to the table, and he's becoming our newest member. So thank you for that. There's more applications we'll have up here and some other sheets that have that information on it. Questions, comments? Aaron, why are you a member of the IMC Club?
To be a better pilot, safer pilot.
I mean, just think about this. If you put yourself in a situation like our scenario today, now you've already thought things. It's kind of neat. You never know what's going to work. So, TRACON tour, I talked about hypoxia training. We have a hypoxia simulator coming on Friday. Unfortunately, right now, all of those sessions are taken up. However, part of what they're doing is about an hour of ground. So if you're interested, I know I had a couple of seats open up for the 9 o'clock. There's a 9 to 11 session. And then I've got quite a few open yet for the 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's actually going to be only an hour. But the full training, which is really cool, these guys are coming in from Washington, and they have a simulator. Bob, can you describe what your experience was a few years ago?
Yeah, the thing about hypoxia training, if you do it in the hyperbaric chamber, which probably some of you have done that through the years.
Yeah.
But what's unique about hypoxia training is everybody's symptoms are a little bit different. And as an example, for me, I get real warm when if I've been at altitude too long. And then the other things that, you start losing your color vision and your peripheral vision starts coming in. Immediately I know what I'm going through. And that's the value of this training, is that you can sit down at this console, they put a mask on you, and instead of you having to travel hundreds of miles to go through a chamber, you can sit down and the computer starts taking away your oxygen, and you start feeling those symptoms. And what's also neat is they give you a CD that's watching your eyes, and so you can watch it at any time, and you'll know what you're going through. And they ask you the simple things like they do in a chamber. who's the President of the United States, who's, what's 2 times 2. And what's funny is at the end, I mean, where you're sitting there, you're going, oh, I know, this is good. And all of a sudden, they're going, hello, hello. And then you look at your little sheet and you go, gosh, I couldn't write anything there. So it's very valuable, especially if you've never done any of that.
Yeah. So, and again, unfortunately, that's a great sales pitch for something we don't have any availability on, although I understand they're trying to bring another different kind of simulator in December. They configure a room that's more like the chamber. So keep an eye out for that. There would be information coming from the Colorado Pilots Association on that one. And then, how many of you have been to a Michael Setonich weather seminar? They are awesome. And his weather fundamentals, great for students coming in. The more you hear, the more you learn, the retention is better. February 24th is that one. It's right here in this room. And it's actually already been posted on FAA Safety. So, all right, any other questions? Next meeting will be March 13 here. And then thank you, and we'd love to have you join us. So, thanks for coming tonight.
Absolutely.
Did everybody